The auditorium smelled of polished wood, sweat, and ambition, the kind of place where dreams were either discovered or quietly buried. Bright white lights hung from the ceiling like judgmental eyes, scanning every face that stepped onto the stage. Backstage, voices blended into a low nervous hum, whispers of scales being practiced, shaky laughter, prayers muttered under breath. In the middle of that chaos stood a black teenage girl named Amara Johnson. Her hands trembling slightly, as she held the microphone she had been given only minutes ago. She wasn't supposed to be here alone. She had signed up as part of a group audition, a small community choir from her neighborhood, but moments earlier, everything had changed. The change had come in the form of Damon Cross, a world-famous singer whose name alone could silence a room. He was a global icon, winner of countless awards. Adored by millions, feared by many. When Leon walked into the audition hall as a guest judge, phones had come out, gasps followed, and excitement rippled like electricity. He had smiled that perfect smile, the one people paid thousands to see in concerts, and taken his seat with casual arrogance. To him this was entertainment. To Amara, this was everything. Amara had grown up singing in places where nobody clapped, tiny churches with broken fans, school hallways where laughter drowned her voice. A small bedroom where she practiced quietly so her mother wouldn't worry about neighbors complaining. Her father used to say her voice was special, that it carried pain and hope at the same time. He died when she was 12. Since then, singing wasn't just a dream, it was survival. Every note was a memory. Every lyric was a promise to herself that her life would be more than struggle. When her choir was called, they stepped onto the stage together, hands linked, strength in numbers. But before they could even begin, Leon leaned forward, tapping his pen against the desk. The sound echoed in the silent hall. He smirked, eyes landing on Amara longer than necessary. He said, pointing. "Step forward." Confused murmurs spread through the audience. Amara hesitated, then obeyed. Leon glanced at the rest of the choir and waved them back with a dismissive flick of his hand. "I want to hear her solo." The choir director tried to protest. "Sir, we registered as a group." Leon cut him off with a laugh that carried no warmth. "Relax, if she's good she'll shine, if she's not, well we save time." Some people chuckled. Others shifted uncomfortably. Amara's throat tightened. She could feel heat crawling up her neck, eyes burning. But she refused to cry. She had cried enough in life. She stepped to the center of the stage, suddenly very aware of how alone she was. Lan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Sing something challenging," he said loudly. "Don't pick something easy. Let's see if all that confidence holds up." His tone dripped with mockery, as if he already knew the outcome. Some judges exchanged looks, sensing something was wrong, but no one spoke. Power had a way of silencing people. Amara swallowed hard. Her mind raced. She knew what he was doing. He wanted her to fail. To crack. To become a moment people would laugh about later. A black girl who thought she could stand where legends stood. For a split second fear nearly won. Her hands shook. The microphone felt heavier than before. Then she remembered her father's voice telling her. "When they try to make you small, sing louder." The music started, a simple piano intro filling the room. Amara closed her eyes. The first note came out soft, almost fragile. A few people in the audience exchanged glances, as if thinking Leon was right. He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. But then something shifted. The second line carried more weight. The third reached deeper. Her voice wasn't just sound, it was story. Pain from eviction notices. From being underestimated, from watching her mother work herself to exhaustion. The notes climbed higher, stronger, controlled in a way that surprised even her. Leon sat up straighter. His smirk faded just a little. As the song progressed, Amara did something no one expected. She didn't just hit the notes, she lived inside them. High notes that should have been sharp came out clean and full. Runs that required years of discipline flowed effortlessly. The room grew still. Phones stopped recording. Whispers died. Even the judges forgot to write. They just listened. Leon's jaw tightened. This wasn't going according to his plan. When Amara reached the bridge, her voice cracked, not from weakness but from emotion. It was raw, real, and powerful. Tears slid down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. She sang through them, turning vulnerability into strength. The final note soared, hanging in the air long after the music stopped, refusing to disappear. Silence followed. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then one person stood up. Then another. Applause erupted, not polite clapping, but the kind that comes from shock and respect. The audience rose to their feet. Amara opened her eyes, stunned, breathing hard. She hadn't expected this. She had only expected to survive. Leon Forced 8. The auditorium smelled of polished wood and old velvet, the kind of place where legends were supposed to be born, not buried. Rows of empty seats stretched into darkness, but on the stage, under the hot white lights, the air felt heavy, almost judgmental. Amara stood near the microphone. Hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned pale. She could hear her own heartbeat louder than the faint hum of the speakers. This wasn't how she imagined singing in a real auditorium for the first time. There was no applause, no encouraging smiles, only silence and him. Damon Cross sat casually in the front row, one leg crossed over the other, sunglasses still on even though there was no sun inside. A world-famous singer. A man whose voice had sold out stadiums, and whose name alone could make careers or destroy them. He leaned back as if he owned the building. As if everyone in it existed purely for his entertainment. Around him, a few producers and assistants whispered among themselves. Their eyes moving between Damon and Amara like spectators at a slow-burning accident. "So," Damon finally said, his voice smooth but sharp enough to cut. "You're the girl everyone keeps talking about." He let the word girl hang in the air, loaded and deliberate. "They say you can sing." Amara swallowed. "Yes, sir." Her voice came out soft but steady. Damon chuckled, not amused, mocking. "Sir, relax, this isn't church." He leaned forward now, elbows on his knees. "Sing something. Anything. Let's see if you're worth the time." She nodded, stepping closer to the mic. The light blinded her for a moment, and for a split second. Fear threatened to lock her throat. Memories rushed in, singing quietly in her room so neighbors wouldn't complain. Her mother humming along while washing dishes. The way music had always been her escape when words failed her. She closed her eyes and took a breath. The first note trembled. Damon raised an eyebrow. "That's it." He interrupted. "That's the big talent." A few quiet laughs came from somewhere behind him. Amara's cheeks burned, but she forced herself to keep going. Her voice grew stronger with each note, filling the empty space, bouncing off the walls. For a moment, the room changed. Even the assistants stopped whispering. But Damon waved his hand. "Stop. Stop." He stood up now, clapping slowly, sarcastically. Okay, I get it, you've got something." He walked up onto the stage, circling her like a critic inspecting a flawed painting. "But you know what the problem is." Amara said nothing. "You're too small," he continued. "Too plain. And let's be honest." He paused, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate while still cutting deep. "People like you don't sell records. Not without help." The words hit her harder than any shout could have. "People like you." She'd heard that phrase before in classrooms, on buses, in places where she wasn't expected to dream too loudly. Still, hearing it here, from someone with so much power, made her chest ache. Damon smirked. "Here's what we'll do. Tonight's showcase. You're going to sing solo." He waited, enjoying the confusion on her face. "Oh, don't look so scared, it's a big opportunity." He leaned closer. "I want to see what happens when you stand alone. No backup. No safety net." She realized then what he was doing. This wasn't a chance, it was a setup. A way to expose her. To embarrass her in front of an audience that already idolized him. If she failed, it would prove his point. If she succeeded, he didn't believe that was possible. "I'll do it," Amara said quietly. Damon laughed again. "Good, I like confidence." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Amara," he glanced back over his shoulder. "Try not to embarrass yourself." As he walked away, the weight of the moment settled on her shoulders. She was alone on that stage now, the lights still glaring. The silence louder than before. Her hands shook, but deep inside, beneath the fear and humiliation, something else stirred, something stubborn and unbreakable. She wasn't there to impress Damon Cross. She was there to sing. And as she stepped off the stage, a thought echoed in her mind like a quiet promise. They may laugh now, but they will listen later. If this story is already pulling you in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what's coming next will change everything. The night of the showcase arrived faster than Amara expected. As if time itself was eager to throw her into the fire. The auditorium was no longer empty and quiet like before. It buzzed with energy. Camera crews setting up, producers rushing around with headsets. Audience members filling seats while excited chatter bounced off the walls. Giant screens flashed Damon Cross's name in bold letters, reminding everyone exactly who the star of the night was supposed to be. Posters with his face lined the entrance. His legacy dominated the room before he even stepped inside. Backstage, Amara stood in front of a cracked mirror, staring at her reflection. Her dress was simple. Borrowed from a cousin, carefully ironed but still modest compared to the glittering outfits worn by others. Around her, performers warmed up confidently, laughing, posting selfies, rehearsing choreography. No one talked to her. Some didn't even look at her. To them she was invisible. Just another girl about to be swallowed by the spotlight and forgotten. A stage assistant walked by and stopped. "You're the solo girl, right?" he asked, scanning a clipboard. "You're on right after Damon's opening performance." Her stomach dropped. Right after him. After the crowd had been lifted by his voice. Spoiled by perfection, conditioned to compare everything to a legend. It felt intentional. She nodded anyway. "Okay." As the lights dimmed in the auditorium, the crowd roared. Damon Cross walked onto the stage like a king returning to his throne. The applause was thunderous, deafening. He smiled, waved, soaked it in. This was his world. He sang his opening number flawlessly, hitting every note with practiced ease. The audience screamed his name, some crying, some holding signs. Amara watched from the wings, her heart pounding. She couldn't deny it, he was talented. But talent, she was learning, didn't always come with kindness. Damon finished to a standing ovation. He bowed, basking in the love, then raised his hand for silence. "Tonight," he said into the mic, "we're also giving chances to new voices." A pause. A smirk. Some more ready than others. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and now, he continued. "A special solo performance." He glanced toward the wings. "Let's see what she's got." Amara felt the heat before she even stepped out. Her legs felt heavy, but she forced them forward. The applause was weak, scattered, uncertain. She could feel eyes judging her outfit, her posture, her skin. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "Who is she?" She reached the microphone and closed her eyes for just a second. She thought of her mother sitting at home, hands clasped in prayer. She thought of her father's smile. She thought of every time she had been told she wasn't enough. The music began. At first, the audience didn't react. They were still recovering from Damon's performance, still comparing, still waiting for something to go wrong. Damon watched from the side of the stage, arms crossed, confidence radiating from him. He expected cracks, missed notes, proof, but Amara sang with restraint, control, patience. She didn't rush to impress. She let the melody breathe. Slowly, heads in the audience began to lift. People leaned forward, phones rose not to record Damon, but her. When she reached the chorus, her voice expanded, powerful yet clean, filling every corner of the auditorium. The sound system vibrated, the room changed. It wasn't about Damon anymore. It was about the story pouring out of her chest. Pain, survival. Damon's expression shifted, his jaw tightened. He glanced at the sound engineer, then back at Amara, as if searching for flaws. But there were none. Then came the moment he never anticipated. The final run climbed higher than anything in his own opening song. A note so difficult no singers avoided it live. Amara didn't just hit it, she owned it. The sound soared, rich and fearless, holding steady long enough to make the audience gasp. Even Damon froze, the auditorium exploded. People stood up. Cheering, screaming, clapping, some wiped tears from their eyes. Amara lowered the mic, her chest heaving, stunned by the response. For a moment, she forgot Damon existed. Then he walked back onto the stage. The applause faded into tense silence. Damon took the microphone from its stand, smiling for the cameras. "Very impressive," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "You surprised us." Amara nodded politely, "But," he continued, turning to the audience, "let's not confuse raw emotion with true mastery." He laughed lightly. "High notes are flashy. Consistency is what matters." He looked back at her, his eyes sharp. "And that takes time." Some people clapped hesitantly. Others stayed silent, uncomfortable. Amara felt the familiar sting of dismissal. But it didn't crush her this time. Something had shifted. The crowd had heard her. As she walked off the stage, her hands shaking, she knew one thing for sure. Damon Cross hadn't just tested her, He had awakened something he could no longer control. The applause from the showcase still echoed in Amara's ears. Long after the lights had gone darker, the crowd spilled out into the night. Backstage. The energy was different now. The same people who had ignored her earlier suddenly glanced her way. Some whispering, some pretending not to stare. A few performers nodded at her in quiet respect. She felt it, the shift. It wasn't fame yet, but it was recognition, and it scared her almost as much as it thrilled her. Damon Cross, on the other hand, felt something else entirely. Rage. In his private dressing room, he yanked the towel from around his neck and threw it at the mirror. His reflection stared back at him, jaw clenched, eyes burning. For the first time in years, someone had stood on his stage and stolen a 10 without permission. Worse. It wasn't just anyone, it was a girl he had already decided didn't belong. The idea gnawed at him, scratching at his pride. She wasn't supposed to do that. He muttered. Outside the room, producers debated in low voices. The crowd loved her. One said, "That note, did you hear that?" Another replied, "Social media's already buzzing. Clips are everywhere." Damon stepped out, his smile back in place like armor. "Let's not get carried away," he said smoothly. "Talent shows create moments, moments fade." He paused, eyes cold. "Make sure the judge's feedback reflects that." Amara sat on a folding chair down the hall clutching her phone. Messages poured in. People she hadn't spoken to in years, strangers tagging her in videos, comments flooding her screen. Who is this girl? She gave me chills. Why is Damon trying to downplay her? Her hands trembled as she scrolled. She should have felt happy. Instead, a knot of fear tightened in her chest. Her choir director approached quietly. "You did amazing," he said, pride shining in his eyes. "No matter what happens next, remember that." "What if that's it?" she asked softly. "What if he makes sure there is no next?" He sighed. People like him have power. But power doesn't erase truth. And tonight, the truth sang. The next morning, the headlines were split. Some praised Damon's performance. Others focused on Amara, calling her the breakout star of the night. One article read, "Unknown teen steals spotlight from music icon." Damon read it in silence, his fingers tightening around his phone. The comments were worse. People were questioning him, his reaction, his attitude, his need to belittle her. He made a decision. At a press interview later that day, Damon leaned into the microphone, expression calm. "Amara has potential," he said. "But potential needs guidance. Fame can be dangerous for young artists. Especially when they don't understand the industry." He smiled sympathetically. "I'd hate to see her get hurt by unrealistic expectations." The words were polished, concerned, and devastating. By evening, the narrative began to shift. Articles questioned whether Amara was ready. Whether her voice was sustainable. Whether the moment had been overhyped. Commentators debated her technique, her image, her background. Some defended her fiercely. Others echoed Damon's doubts. Amara watched it all unfold from her small living room, her mother sitting beside her in silence. "Why is he doing this?" her mother finally asked. Amara shook her head. "Because he can." Her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered hesitantly. "Hello, Amara Johnson," a woman's voice said. "This is Celeste Harper. I'm a vocal producer. I've worked with artists you admire." A pause. "I saw your performance." Amara's breath caught. "Why?" "Because what you did scared the wrong people." Celeste replied. "And that usually means you're doing something right." They agreed to meet quietly, away from cameras, away from Damon's reach. As Amara hung up, a spark of hope ignited in her chest. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. Across the city, Damon stared out the window of his penthouse, watching the lights below. He had tried to control the story. Instead it had grown bigger. Harder to contain. "She thinks she's rising," he said to no one. "We'll see how high she gets." What neither of them fully understood yet was this: the battle had moved beyond the stage. And the next note Amara would sing wouldn't just be about music, it would be about survival. The studio Celeste Harper worked out of was nothing like the glossy rooms Amara had imagined. There were no gold records on the walls, no crystal chandeliers. No assistants rushing around with tablets. Instead it was quiet, tucked away behind an old brick building downtown, filled with worn couches. Handwritten notes taped to the walls, and a piano that looked older than both of them combined. Building downtown, filled with worn couches. Handwritten notes taped to the walls, and a piano that looked older than both of them combined. Yet the moment Amara stepped inside, she felt something she hadn't felt on any stage before: safety. Celeste watched her carefully as Amara warmed up, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "You don't sing from your throat," she said finally. "You sing from memory. That's why it hits people. But that's also why it can break you if you're not careful." Amara nodded, unsure what to say. She had never had formal training. Everything she knew came from instinct, from emotion, from surviving. Celeste didn't try to change that. She refined it. They worked for hours, breathing techniques, control, endurance. Amara's voice cracked more than once, frustration building, tears threatening to fall. Each time Celeste stopped her gently. "Pain is fuel," she said. "But discipline is direction." Outside that small studio, the world continued to argue about her worth. Damon Cross's influence hadn't faded. Invitations Amara thought might come never did. Producers stopped returning calls. Some quietly admitted they didn't want trouble. "You're talented," one manager said apologetically over the phone, "but you're complicated right now." Complicated. The word followed her everywhere. One night, exhausted, Amara collapsed onto her bed and opened her phone. A video had gone viral. Damon on a podcast laughing. "She's got a big voice," he said casually. "But big voices burn out fast, I've seen it happen." The host nodded along. The comments were brutal. Some defended her, others mocked her, questioning whether she deserved the attention at all. Amara turned the phone face down and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since the showcase, doubt crept in. What if he was right? What if that night was her peak? The next morning, Celeste handed her a printed flyer. "There's an invitation, only live performance next month," she said. "Industry people. Critics, no autotune, no safety nets." She paused. "Damon Cross is on the panel." Amara's stomach dropped. "He did that on purpose." "Of course he did," Celeste replied calmly. "He thinks he can control the narrative. He thinks pressure will expose you." Amara's hands trembled as she held the paper. "What if I fail?" Celeste met her eyes. "Then you fail honestly. But if you succeed," she smiled slightly, "you don't just sing. You redefine yourself." Training became relentless. Early mornings. Vocal rest days that felt like punishment. Amara's body ached. Her voice strained, but something inside her grew stronger, quieter, steadier. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was building armor, at home. Her mother watched her with worried eyes. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she said one night. Amara hugged her tightly. "I know. But I have to prove it to myself." As the performance date drew closer, tension built across social media. Rumors spread. Some said Damon planned to put her in her place. Others said he was nervous. The narrative split the internet in half. The night before the event, Amara stood alone in the empty studio, lights dimmed, microphone in hand. She sang softly, not for practice, not for judges, but for herself. Every note felt grounded, intentional. She wasn't trying to be louder than Damon Cross. She was trying to be truer than fear. Somewhere across the city, Damon sat in silence, listening to a recording of Amara's viral note. He replayed it again and again, his expression unreadable. For the first time uncertainty crept into his confidence. Not because she had matched him, but because she had reached places his voice never had. Tomorrow, the world would listen again. The venue for the invitation, only performance, was smaller than the showcase but far more intimidating. There were no cheering fans lining up outside. No flashing signs or booming speakers to hide behind. This room was designed for judgment. Every seat was filled with people whose opinions could open doors or slam them shut forever: executives, critics, producers, vocal coaches. The kind of audience that didn't clap unless something truly deserved it. Amara stood backstage, eyes closed, breathing slowly the way Celeste had taught her. Inhale, hold, release. Her heart still raced, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned how to carry fear without letting it sing for her. Damon Cross arrived late, on purpose. The room shifted when he entered, whispers following him like shadows. He took his seat at the center of the panel, perfectly composed, confidence polished to a shine. When he glanced toward the stage and saw Amara waiting, his lips curved into a knowing smile. To him, this was still his arena. The host stepped forward. "Tonight, we're here to hear voices without filters," he announced. "No backing tracks, no second chances, just truth." A pause. First performer, Amara Johnson. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Some leaned forward, curious. Others folded their arms skeptically. Amara stepped into the light. The silence was suffocating. She didn't rush. She adjusted the microphone, grounded her feet, and looked out at the faces staring back at her. Her eyes met Damon's for just a moment. He gave her a small nod as if granting permission. She began. The song choice surprised everyone. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't designed to show off. It was stripped down. Almost fragile. The first notes hovered, delicate but intentional. You could hear every breath, every shift of emotion. This wasn't a performance built to impress. It was built to reveal. Damon's smile faded. As the song unfolded, Amara's control became impossible to ignore. She navigated difficult transitions effortlessly, her voice steady, her tone rich. There was no strain, no reaching. Just mastery born from discipline and truth. People exchanged glances. Pens paused mid-note. A critic in the front row slowly lowered her notebook. Then came the final section. Amara closed her eyes and leaned into the sound, her voice rising, not to dominate, but to connect. The note she held wasn't the highest anyone had ever heard. It was something else entirely. It was pure, balanced, impossible to fake. The kind of note that lives in the chest long after it ends. The room stayed silent when she finished. Not because they were unimpressed. Because they were stunned. Damon cleared his throat and reached for his microphone. Technically. He began, choosing his words carefully. That was very controlled. He paused. But I wonder if playing it safe limits you. Art requires risk. Amara looked at him calm. Respectfully. She said, her voice steady even without the mic. Risk isn't always loud. Sometimes it's honest. A murmur swept through the room. Damon's jawed a laugh. Confidence is good, he said. But humility keeps careers alive. One of the other panelists leaned forward. So does excellence, she said simply. For the first time, Damon said nothing. When the host thanked Amara and she stepped offstage, the applause came, not explosive, not explosive. The kind that comes from respect. Celeste caught her backstage, eyes shining. You didn't just sing, she whispered. You stood. Outside the venue, clips of the performance began spreading within minutes. Critics posted reactions in real time. Unshakable. Controlled power. A voice built to last. The narrative was shifting again faster than Damon could redirect it. He sat in his chair, staring at the stage where Amara had stood, a feeling he hadn't known in years settling in his chest. It wasn't anger this time. It was fear. Because for the first time, he understood something clearly. This girl wasn't chasing his approval anymore. She was surpassing his reach. Success didn't arrive for Amara like a celebration. It arrived like a storm, fast, loud and dangerous. Within hours of the performance her name was everywhere. Music blogs dissected her technique, critics praised her restraint, and clips of her response to Damon spread like wildfire. People called it classy. Powerful. Iconic. For the first time the story wasn't about whether she belonged. It was about why she had been doubted in the first place. Damon Cross watched the shift from behind tinted windows and closed doors. Every headline felt like a crack in the image he had built over decades. He had survived changing trends, younger artists, even scandals, but this was different. This wasn't competition on his terms. This was exposure. People were no longer just admiring Amara, they were questioning him. She made you look threatened. One executive told him over the phone, trying to sound neutral. Damon ended the call without responding. The retaliation was subtle at first. A scheduled radio appearance where Amara was suddenly unavailable. A collaboration rumor quietly shut down. Industry doors that had begun to open slowed again, not slammed, just held slightly ajar, enough to remind her who still controlled the hinges. Celeste noticed immediately. This isn't random, she said. He's tightening the net. Amara nodded, exhaustion lining her face. I knew it wouldn't be easy. What she didn't expect was how personal it would become. An anonymous article appeared online questioning her authenticity. It suggested her performances were manufactured. That she was being positioned as a symbol, rather than an artist. The tone was careful but the message was clear. She wasn't real. Comments followed, harsher this time. Some praised her. Others accused her of playing the victim card. Her mother found her sitting in the dark that night. Phone in hand. You don't have to read that, she said gently. Amara shook her head. I need to understand what I'm up against. The next morning, Celeste walked into the studio holding her tablet, eyes blazing. "They're planning a tribute concert," she said, "honoring Damon's career." She paused. "They invited you." Amara frowned. "Why would they do that?" "Because if you decline, you look ungrateful. If you accept, you're on his stage again, under his rules." It was a trap dressed as an honor. Amara took a long breath. "Then I'll go." The night of the tribute, the atmosphere was thick with nostalgia and power. Damon stood at the center of it all, praised by peers, applauded by fans. When Amara's name was announced as a guest performer, the room buzzed with tension. She walked onto the stage aware of every eye, every expectation. Damon greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Honored to have you," he said into the mic. "The honor is mine," she replied calmly. He leaned closer. "Sing one of my songs," he said softly. "Not a request. A command." The band began before she could respond. Amara recognized the song immediately, one of his most technically demanding pieces. Known for notes few could sing without strain. Damon watched closely, waiting. This was his moment to reclaim dominance. Amara closed her eyes. She didn't copy him. She reimagined the song completely, changing the phrasing, lowering some keys, adding subtle runs that transformed it from a display of ego into a story of vulnerability. The song became something new. Something deeper. The audience felt it. When she finished, the applause was immediate and overwhelming. People rose to their feet. Not because they loved Damon's legacy, but because they had just heard it reborn. Damon stood frozen, clapping slowly. Cameras caught everything, the tension in his face, the forced smile, the realization. Backstage, a reporter cornered him. "How does it feel?" she asked, "to hear your own song elevated like that?" Damon's smile faltered for half a second. "Art evolves," he said tightly. "I'm glad she understands that." But he didn't. That night, Amara understood something crucial. This was no longer just about her voice. It was about a system that protected power and punished those who threatened it. And she had just stepped fully into its spotlight. The applause from the tribute concert hadn't even faded before the backlash began. It moved quietly at first, like a rumor you couldn't quite trace. A cancelled interview here. A delayed contract there. Amara could feel the invisible hands pushing back, trying to guide her into a smaller shape. But this time, she wasn't confused. She knew exactly who was pulling the strings. What she didn't know was how far Damon Cross was willing to go. 2 days after the concert, Celeste arrived at the studio unusually early, her face pale. She didn't sit down, she didn't smile. "We have a problem," she said. Amara's chest tightened. "What kind of problem?" "There's an old NDA," Celeste replied. "One Damon signed years ago with a former vocal coach. Someone who worked with him before he was famous." She hesitated. "That coach Amara listened, heart pounding, as Celeste explained. The coach claimed Damon had damaged his own voice early in his career, by pushing beyond safe limits, hiding it with studio tricks, pitch correction, and carefully managed performances. The myth of his flawless voice wasn't entirely real. Worse, he had allegedly blocked other singers. Especially those who could naturally sing in ranges he no longer could. "He's not just protecting his legacy," Celeste said quietly. "He's protecting a secret." Amara sat back, stunned. Suddenly, everything made sense: the mocking, the control, the obsession with humbling her. It wasn't just ego, it was fear. That same evening, a leaked audio clip surfaced online. Damon's voice, unmistakable, speaking harshly to an unnamed assistant. "I won't be replaced by some girl they feel sorry for," he said. "Do whatever it takes." The internet exploded. Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. "Let her sing truth music." Fans dissected every past performance of Damon's. Every strained note, every lip-synced appearance. Critics who once defended him went quiet. Others turned openly critical. Damon released a statement the next morning. Calm and controlled. He denied everything. Called the leak manipulated. Accused unnamed rivals of orchestrating a smear campaign. He didn't mention Amara by name, but everyone knew. Amara watched the press conference from home, her mother gripping her hand. "This is getting dangerous," her mother whispered. "I know," Amara replied. "But silence won't protect me either." Offers began to arrive, real ones this time. Independent labels, live acoustic sessions, invitations to perform without filters or favors. People wanted to hear her voice, not a narrative. Still fear lingered. Accepting meant stepping fully into the fire. One message stood out. A nonprofit organization focused on artist rights invited her to speak, not sing, at a live-streamed event. To talk about her experience. Amara stared at the invitation for a long time. Speaking would mean naming things people preferred to ignore. It would mean crossing an invisible line. Celeste waited. You don't have to do this. Amara looked up, calm but resolute. If I don't, someone else will be next. The live stream drew millions. Amara sat under soft lights, no makeup, no music. Just her voice. She spoke about being underestimated, about being put on stages designed for failure, about how power disguises itself as mentorship. She never attacked. She never shouted. She simply told the truth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Artists came forward with similar stories. Producers admitted off the record what they had always known. Damon's silence grew louder by the hour. That night, Amara stood alone in her room, looking at the city lights through her window. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring. Fame, retaliation, both, but one thing was clear. Her voice had already done what it was meant to do. The industry didn't collapse overnight. Power never does. It bends, reshapes itself, pretends to listen while calculating its next move. But after Amara spoke, something irreversible had begun. Meetings were cancelled. Deals were paused. Damon Cross, once everywhere, became suddenly absent. No interviews, no posts, no appearances. Silence followed him like a shadow. Behind closed doors, lawyers worked nonstop. Statements were drafted and discarded. Damage control teams argued late into the night. Damon sat alone in his studio, surrounded by gold records that no longer felt like trophies. They felt like evidence. Every note he had ever recorded echoed in his mind, not with pride, but with comparison. He replayed Amara's performances, hating how effortless her voice sounded, hating how free it was. He knew the final test was coming. The Global Live Honors announced their annual broadcast, an event watched by millions. Know its raw, unedited performances. At the top of the list, a special segment titled Voices of Truth. 2 performers, 1 stage, no playback. The names were released simultaneously. Damon Cross, Amara Johnson. Social media erupted. Some called it justice. Others called it cruelty. The debate was fierce, emotional, unstoppable. Damon's team tried to withdraw him quietly, but pulling out would look like admission. Staying meant risk. Amara received the call late at night. She listened silently, then said one word. Yes. The night of the broadcast, the venue was electric. The audience knew history was about to happen. There were no flashy lights, no dramatic entrances. Just a single stage, 2 microphones, and an expectant silence that pressed against the walls. Damon walked out first. The applause was polite, uncertain. He looked older somehow. Tired. When Amara followed, the reaction was different, not louder, but warmer. Supportive. Real. They stood facing each other. The host explained the rules briefly, then stepped away. Damon began. His voice was still good. Trained. Familiar. But something was missing, the higher notes strained. The transitions felt careful, calculated. The audience listened respectfully, but without awe. Damon finished and exhaled, as if relieved. Then Amara stepped forward. She didn't look at Damon. She looked beyond him, toward every person who had ever been told to shrink. Her song wasn't about victory or revenge. It was about endurance. Her voice moved effortlessly through ranges Damon had once owned but could no longer reach. Not with arrogance. With grace. When she reached the final note, she held it steady, clear, unbroken. The sound filled the room and settled deep into the silence. The audience rose, not slowly, instantly. Applause thundered. Tears fell. Cameras caught Damon lowering his head, the truth undeniable, not spoken, heard. Backstage, he sat alone while producers congratulated Amara nearby. No one mocked him. No one needed to. Any accusation. Later that night, Damon released a short statement. No excuses, no denials, just one sentence. It's time for new voices to lead. It wasn't an apology. But it was surrender. Amara watched the broadcast replay from home, her mother beside her. Neither spoke for a long time. I'm proud of you. Her mother finally said. Amara smiled softly. I'm free. The world would remember this night, not as a downfall, but as a passing of truth from one generation to the next. The days after the Global Live Honors were surreal. Amara walked through the city, hearing whispers, catching glimpses of screens playing clips of her performance. She was famous, but not in the way Damon had been. Her fame wasn't built on spectacle or manipulation. It was built on honesty. Every note she had sung, every word she had spoken, had carved a space for her that nobody could take away. Opportunities arrived quickly. Invitations to perform at festivals, collaborations with respected artists, even international tours. Yet she remained grounded. Celeste often reminded her. Talent opens doors, but humility and truth keep you in them. Amara carried that lesson with her. Choosing projects that resonated with her soul, rather than the ones that promised easy money. Damon Cross receded from the public eye. Reports circulated that he had taken a hiatus, reflecting on his career and the decisions he had made. In the music world, his influence was undeniable, but it had shifted. No longer was he the unchallenged voice at the top. Amara had proven that excellence and integrity could redefine power. Amara, however, didn't dwell on revenge or dominance. She used her platform to inspire others. Workshops for motivational talks about overcoming fear. Online tutorials sharing her techniques. She even started a foundation to support undiscovered talent, ensuring that other young artists wouldn't face the kind of barriers she had. Her story became a beacon for those told they weren't enough. One evening, after a performance in a small, intimate theater, Amara sat backstage alone, reflecting on her journey. The fear, the humiliation, the doubt, all of it had forged her. She had faced someone who tried to control her, who sought to mock her, who wanted to make her small. But she had risen. Not just because of her voice, but because she refused to let fear define her. Her mother joined her, wrapping her in a warm hug. "You've changed the world, Amara," she said softly. Amara smiled, feeling the weight of every struggle lift slightly. "I just sang the truth," she replied. And people finally heard it. The story of that one night, and the battles that followed, became legend. Interviews, documentaries, podcasts, all recounted the tale of the girl who hit notes no one thought she could, who faced a world-famous star and turned fear into power. But the most important lesson she carried forward wasn't fame. It was courage, integrity, persistence. And as Amara prepared for her next song, a new stage, a new audience, she whispered a quiet promise to herself: "I will always sing my truth." Even after her rise, life didn't slow down for Amara. Fame brought opportunity, yes, but also expectation, scrutiny, and pressure unlike anything she had imagined. Social media was relentless. Every performance, every interview, every outfit dissected. Some praised her brilliance, others criticized, comparing her constantly to the legend she had once faced. Yet Amara felt stronger than ever. Her foundation, designed to support undiscovered talent, had grown faster than she anticipated. Young singers, dancers, and musicians reached out daily, each story touching her deeply. Amara realized that her voice had become more than just sound. It was influence, hope, and a platform to uplift others. She began organizing masterclasses, teaching breathing techniques, emotional expression, and stage presence. She was giving the lessons she had learned the hard way. But not everything was easy. Old rivals and skeptics lurked in the background. Damon Cross, though absent from public stages, remained a figure casting long shadows in the industry. Some insiders tried subtly to discredit her, suggesting she was lucky, overhyped, or inexperienced. Amara had learned to ignore most of it, focusing instead on preparation, practice, and her own growth. One night, a live-streamed Q&A brought her face to face with a question she hadn't expected. "Amara, now that you've faced the industry's toughest critics, including Damon Cross, how do you stay grounded?" She smiled, breathing slowly before answering. "I remind myself that the voice is just a tool. What matters is what you put into it, the truth, the heart, and the courage to sing even when the world doubts you. If you stay true to that, the rest will follow." As she spoke, her viewers, thousands watching live, sent messages flooding the chat. Inspiring. "She's a legend. This gives me hope to chase my own dreams." In the days that followed, Amara received invitations from global events, collaborations with emerging artists, and even international tours. But she was selective. Every project had to align with her vision: honesty, passion, and impact. She wasn't chasing fame anymore, she was defining it on her terms. Late one evening, after a small private concert for charity, Amara stood backstage alone, watching the empty hall. The echoes of her song still lingered in the air. She smiled, remembering the journey, from being mocked, underestimated, and challenged, to standing as a voice that couldn't be silenced. Her phone buzzed with a message from Celeste. "Your story is far from over. Ready for the next chapter." Amara typed back simply, "Always." This was no longer just a story about hitting impossible notes or defying a famous singer. It was about courage, persistence, and using your voice, literally and metaphorically, to change the world. Amara's life had changed in ways she never imagined. What had started as a moment on stage, forced by someone who sought to mock her, had transformed into a platform she could use to inspire thousands. But with visibility came new pressures, new expectations from fans, critics, and even herself. Every performance was scrutinized, every decision debated, and every word shared on social media dissected. One morning, she received an invitation to a high-profile international music festival. It was an opportunity to perform alongside some of the world's most celebrated artists. The letter was formal, precise, and intimidating. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just another stage, it was a test of endurance, creativity, and composure. Celeste joined her for rehearsal in a state-of-the-art studio downtown. "This is more than a performance," Celeste warned. "They're watching not just your voice, but your story, your confidence, how you carry yourself. One wrong move and people will question if you belong on that stage." Amara nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "I don't need anyone to approve my presence. I've already proven myself." The festival arrived with all its grandeur, flashing cameras, global media, and a stage that seemed too big for any human voice to fill. Amara stood backstage looking out at the sea of people. She took a deep breath, remembering every challenge that had brought her here, the mockery, the doubt, Damon Cross's subtle threats, the viral moments, and the relentless training with Celeste. Every step had prepared her for this exact moment. When she walked onto the stage, the lights bathed her in brilliance. A hush fell over the crowd, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Amara opened her mouth and sang. Her voice was refined, fearless and honest, each note telling a story of resilience and authenticity. The audience responded not because she was new or famous, but because her music touched something universal: hope, perseverance, and courage. Backstage, veteran performers whispered, some impressed, some wary. Damon Cross, now attending in a media role, watched silently from the VIP section. He no longer mocked, but his expression was unreadable, a mix of respect and resignation. After her performance, Amara stepped off the stage and saw messages pouring in from young artists she had mentored, calling her their inspiration. She realized then that her journey was no longer about defeating critics or overcoming fear, it was about creating a legacy. Amara smiled, feeling a calm strength she hadn't felt before. This was only the beginning. There would be new stages, new critics, and new challenges. But she would face them all with the same voice that had once been underestimated. And for viewers witnessing this story, remember, subscribe to the channel to follow Amara's continuing journey, where courage, talent, and determination showed and even the smallest voice can echo across the world. With international acclaim came not only opportunities but also a new set of pressures. Amara's schedule was relentless: flights, rehearsals, interviews, and media appearances filled every waking hour. Even with Celeste's guidance, she struggled to balance creativity with expectation. Each note she sang now carried the weight of millions of listeners, and every mistake, real or imagined, felt magnified. One afternoon, while practicing for a collaboration with a renowned European pianist, Amara received a crypt message from an unknown sender. "You're stepping too far. Some doors should remain closed." At first, she ignored it. Threats and warnings were not new, Damon Cross's subtle manipulations were still fresh in her memory. But there was something different about this. Someone had taken notice of her international presence and saw her success as a threat. Celeste noticed her hesitation. "Ignore them," she said firmly. "The only door you should worry about closing is the one in your own mind." But Amara couldn't shake the feeling that the world she was entering was far more complex than she had anticipated. The next day, at a live rehearsal in Paris, she noticed subtle sabotage: a missing sheet of music, an altered arrangement, small details designed to disrupt her performance. Her heart raced, but she stayed calm. Each challenge had taught her resilience, and she refused to let fear dictate her stage. When the performance finally began, the theater was packed. Critics, influencers, and fans filled every seat. The pianist gave her a nod, signaling she was ready. Amara took a deep breath, recalling every lesson from her journey. From the auditorium where Damon had mocked her, to the viral performance that had changed her life to this very moment. Her voice soared. Every note precise. Every emotion authentic. The sabotage was irrelevant. She didn't just sing, she commanded the space, transforming every attempted disruption into fuel for her performance. The audience rose, enraptured, some in tears, some in awe. Backstage, the shadow of rivalry became clearer. A rival artist, long jealous of her rise, whispered to a producer that Amara was too ambitious, too fast. The producer's glance flickered with hesitation, showing the subtle dangers of industry politics. But Amara, standing in the wings after her set, smiled quietly. For every attempt to undermine her, her talent and integrity shone brighter. That night she realized something vital. Success wasn't just about talent. It was about courage, strategy, and the ability to remain true to herself, even when the world tried to twist her story. And for everyone following her journey, remember, subscribe to the channel, because Chapter 14 will reveal Amara's next challenge. One that tests not just her voice, but her courage, heart, and resilience like never before. The International Music Festival in Rome was unlike anything Amara had experienced before. The venue was historic, grand and intimidating, ancient stone walls echoing with